So we are now live and unmuted. Yeah, hi Mark, come on in. Hello. Just grab a seat anywhere you like.
You're live on the internet.
We are live. And you can hear us, but welcome. Thanks for coming.
Is it volume on?
Yep, we're good. We're all good to go.
So, welcome everyone. Before I convene the Food Council meeting, I would like to acknowledge that we are all treating people as such, have a responsibility to engage with our First Nations communities with respect, honesty, and peace. And also today, to acknowledge today as Every Child Matters, wearing an orange t-shirt, in honor of survivors and those who haven't survived the Canadian residential school system. We're supposed to have a couple of guests as well this evening.
Oh, yes, sorry, last minute cancellations on their part.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And, well, welcome everyone. My name is Bernie Clord. I'm the chair for the Food Council for the next year or two. I manage the Charlottetown Farmers Market. And I would like to say thank you to Karen Murchison, who was the past chair, woman of the Food Council. She guided us through the last 2 years in the council's infancy and much success. So just a shout out to Karen for all of her hard work.
She should be here tonight, okay, so we can say that in person as well.
And I guess I'll call the meeting to order with that. And before we go into the specifics of the agenda, are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
Okay, maybe we should do a round of introductions since there's some new people.
It's coming up.
Okay.
And I'll ask a second time, any declaration of conflict of interest? If you look at the agenda this evening, okay. There being no conflicts, we'll move forward. We'll appoint Katrina as the secretary for this evening's meetings.
Yep.
Thank you. And can we do a welcome? I'm changing the agenda.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so we'll do a welcome. So we have new faces and not so new faces.
Yes.
So maybe we can do a round. Like I said, my name is Bernie and I'll be chairing the council.
I'm Brad Durand. I run Founders Delicatessen here on the island. I've been on the island for a couple of years now, and yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this council.
Welcome.
I'm Morgan, returning for a one-year term. I'm not working currently. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't know. But I just started my Ryerson Food Security certificate actually, so that's pretty long message, I guess.
I'm Colleen Walton. I've worked around food for a long time, both in nutrition and sort of food production and food quality. I'm not currently working in food as well right now, but I joined this council, I guess, January of 20, part of the way through because somebody hadn't continued. So sort of new, sort of old too.
My name is Sheena Matthew. I work as a ophthalmology assistant with Dr. Drysdale, and we have a forest catering business, and we are at the farmers market every Saturdays. And in the health field, more than 20 years. I'm in the food industry, more than 10 years, I would say.
Welcome to you as well.
Welcome.
I'm Katrina Crystal, the name behind all of the emails that you get. I'm a sustainability officer for the city at the moment. I'm covering a maternity leave for Jess Brown, who she's been on that leave for about 6 months, and she was the person that kind of got this council up and running. So I'm just the staff contact point for the city, so I'm kind of a bridge between the council and the city itself.
Phil Ferrero, I'm the general manager at the Farm Center. We have a legacy garden there, which is an urban farm with a very large community garden. I also started managing a 5-acre apple orchard in Charlottetown. So as far as I know, I'm the only urban farmer in Charlottetown.
Welcome. We may have a few more people coming.
Yeah.
To our Council of 8, so
It's just Karen Murchison, who was the previous chair, and then Megan Adams. I think are the only two we're missing, and they both responded and said that they'd be a bit late. So I think Megan should be here in the next 10 or 15 minutes, and Karen didn't specify that.
okay. Thank you all for showing up this evening. We have some housekeeping items next on the agenda. Or actually, I'm going to go back. I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
We can do that. Do you want me to second it?
Oh, sure, I'll move it.
Second by Pauline. All in favor? Carried. I think the minutes were passed in an email earlier, or I think on Google you have access to the minutes of the previous meeting.
Correct? Yeah, and I have some printouts here if anyone wants to see.
I think it was July 22nd.
Yeah.
I'll give a few minutes for people to have a read if you were present at that meeting.
Does anybody want a copy?
Printed copy.
I would put a copy too, sorry, I didn't see.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Sure. I only have 3 of them. But
That's
does
good.
anybody else need? And then I can bring it up here too and scan through if anybody wants to.
We've had a chance to review if members who were present at that meeting.
Okay.
Looks good.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
I can do that. It has to be someone who's there.
Yeah, preferably, so yeah.
Yeah.
Validate what was said. Yes.
Someone else is here aside from you over the phone, which I don't know if you can actually. You were the only other one I think that's here at the moment. So I don't know.
Wait
if
for
we can-
Karen.
Yeah, we can wait, and Megan was there too, so we may
We'll
have-
wait for them.
just to carry it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll put that aside.
Alrighty.
We'll come back to it. Next on the agenda is housekeeping items, and I think Katrina.
Yeah, I can take care of that. So I think all of you have probably seen the terms of reference at this point, just kind of wanted to highlight a couple of things from it. We did make some amendments to it at our last meeting, one of which, just for the newer members, just sort of for your information, previously this council sat at between 10 to 14 members, and it was decided to shrink it to 6 to 8 members. Just sort of a decision that brings it more in line with what the rest of the advisory boards for the city do. Hi. Come on in. Any of them are good? That one? I'm just here. Do you want to keep going? Do you want to take a second to welcome?
We'll take a second to welcome
Yeah.
Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Oh, Karen, I can't see that.
Oh.
Do you need a?
Take your time.
copy of the agenda?
Well, if it's there, I
Is
don't
there?
need it.
Okay.
It's not right.
We acknowledged your efforts as chair for the last 2 years in the council's infancy to say thank you for the hard work and do so again. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks.
And maybe do a quick introduction, if you can.
I'm Karen Murchison, and I work with the Certified Organic Producers Cooperative, and I don't know what else am I supposed to say.
That's perfect. That's the bones of it.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And maybe our two new, you know everybody else, I believe.
I know Brad.
Okay, you're Brad. And
Yeah.
then-
I'm Sheena.
Oh, yes, I know you.
Perfect. And then the last member is just Megan, who should be here shortly.
Sure,
as well.
thank you.
Yeah, so thus far, all we've done really is just sort of a welcome and an introduction, and we reviewed the minutes from last time. And
Karen, were you at the meeting?
yes, Karen
Yeah,
was at that
I was.
meeting.
We just need a seconder
Approve those
because
minutes.
Maybe either you or me, Morgan, right?
Morgan,
Pass.
You made the motion. Okay, I will second that motion
You
then.
want it, thank you.
all in favor? Carrie?
And we'll go back to, sorry?
We're back to. yeah,
Housekeeping?
Housekeeping.
Wonderful. Okay, so with the housekeeping, just wanted to point out a few things in terms of reference. Really just like the function of the council is, there's many components to it. Oh, hi Megan. No, we've just had like additions like,
Oh.
it's perfect. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming. Yeah, that's perfect.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It was just ever so slightly comical. So, welcome. All you've really missed is introductions. So, do you want to just take a second to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Megan Adams, and I know lots in the room, but some are newish faces, but I recognize you. So I live in Charlottetown, and I've moved back the last couple of years, and I work as a health promoter for the province. So a lot of my work is, well, it's widespread, but I'm pretty passionate about sustainability and food security and those kind of things and how they link to health outcomes. And so that's how I got involved on this council.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
And so, one of our new members is.
My name is Sheena Matthew. I'm at the farmer's market for us.
They eat your food all the
But,
time. That's why I know you.
And do you know Brad?
Brad, you're on.
Okay, hi, Brad.
And I'm Colleen Walton.
And we've never actually been at the same meeting. so-
Oh, wow.
But I did
Okay,
know.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
There you go. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. We're now complete. Everyone is here. So we're just kind of doing a few quick housekeeping items. So yeah, with function of the food council, it's all in here, but basically just giving advice to the council, proposing things that the city will do, potentially creating policy, acting as a resource for the community, and then also creating and supporting existing programs relating to the priorities around food in the city. You do report to the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee that the city has. So basically what that means is that any initiatives that you would like to do have to be passed through them, as it's sort of the same as the initiatives that we do as staff under the Environment and Sustainability Department. That includes primarily things that require money. So if they're free initiatives, there's more wiggle room, but if we are using funding, then it has to be passed through them prior to spending any funds. The Food Council previously has been given an annual budget of $10,000. This year there's $8,500 remaining based on what's already been spent. And so as I said, we've just put those recommendations forward to the committee, and that goes through me. I generally, the recommendations would come from you. I would prepare a report and present it to that committee. So that's just kind of how the structure of the council works. As I mentioned, I'm the staff contact person for the city, so kind of anytime you need anything from the city, it can come through me. I also support the projects that you guys are doing and have a certain number of staff hours to contribute, but that fluctuates kind of all the time. Generally, my position, the commitment of my position would be as a coordinator, kind of to help coordinate the meetings, do the minutes, provide the agenda, keep everybody in communication with one another. But as I said, often the person in my position has also provided a certain level of support for the projects and done some of the work. From each of you, the expectation is 2 to 4 hours a month, as well as attendance at meetings and preparation for meetings. That's just kind of the standard level of commitment that's required. A new piece this term is that the council approved a $100 stipend for each of you per month, given that a meeting takes place and that you're in attendance at that meeting. So that is in line with all the rest of the advisory boards that the city has. So it's kind of bringing this board up to speed. So we'll maybe just take a minute now. Because of that, everybody has to fill out a form so that they can get paid. There is an option there that you can provide banking information if you like. Otherwise, you'll receive a check in the mail. Ideally, if you could fill it out and return to me today to take up to finance, that's great. If you're missing some of the information, that's okay too. You can take home and scan, take a picture, and send back to me.
Well, can I just ask, does the stipend come from the budget that's provided, or is it
No,
a
it's separate.
budget? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Probably Sheena, if I had
Yeah.
first had the instructions for the first couple boxes. So it should be the new application box, so the first box in the top line. And it would be, you need to check for the SIN number.
For committee member? What was it?
So, no, yeah, I guess it would be committee member.
Can I
Yeah.
email this to you tomorrow?
Yep, yeah, that's fine.
Anything else?
Housekeeping related. I had a sticky note. Does anybody have a sticky note on theirs? The height of organization, clearly.
If something does come up.
There it is. That's pretty much it, I think. Yeah. Unless you had anything you wanted to add. No? Okay.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is ongoing items. Our asset mapping project that was worked on for quite a while. I think Katrina has an update on a virtual. Is it a,
Somewhat. I mean, Megan and I can probably speak to this a little bit. So I would say one of the biggest ongoing projects we do have is the asset map. Do you want to speak to it? Do you want?
Yeah, I can bring some folks up to speed. I mean, I think there's some in the room that maybe did more work before I joined last year. But basically the goal of this was to create sort of a comprehensive fluid list of the strengths and resources that we have in our community related to food. And the idea being that we wanted to validate that by community and then have it as a tool for community, but also for us as a council to move things forward, see where the gaps were, to be able to fill some of those gaps and needs with the budget that we do have every year. And so I joined a little bit later. Jennifer and Jennifer definitely. I think some other folks on the council had created this awesome list of sort of all the assets that do exist in our community of Charlottetown, and we've kind of discussed what it looks like at neighborhood levels, and then the city of Charlottetown, and then the province of PEI. We're a pretty unique province. Obviously, we know a lot of things that we rely on would be outside of Charlottetown, but the focus being city of Charlottetown. So we took that list, and the plan was pre-COVID, we had all of these awesome workshops scheduled to take place over the course of March and April for community to validate those and get feedback and engage them in this process. Obviously, those have been postponed, and so we thought it would be, given the context of COVID, timely to kind of develop a beta tool almost to, rather than validating it by community and then creating the tool, to instead create an example sample tool, and then potentially down the road do some online engagement through that, and then sort of go from there. So that's, Katrina can speak to, we've kind of talked with the city IT, and we're in the phases of that beta tool phase.
Yeah, so the tool's been essentially constructed at this point by a member of, strangely enough, our water and sewer department, who's a GIS technician and is a bit of a wizard, and has helped a lot with that. He threw it together really quickly. He unfortunately had very limited time to contribute, so this would have been probably back in August. He spent like quite literally a day on this, and that was all, and did a really great job. Where we're kind of at right now is that there are some tweaks, and Wes as a council probably need to review and provide feedback on those few tweaks, and then I will have to have another conversation. It's been such a long time, he may have some more time to do that, but my understanding is that he's been redirected to other projects, and we'll have to probably hire somebody to do those last few updates, which isn't really a big deal budget-wise. It shouldn't cost very much. The bigger challenge, he thinks, is actually going to be finding somebody to do it, given how little work it will be. So he had some ideas, where he went to school. I guess he thinks it might be a good student project, so it would just be a matter of somebody reaching out. So that was kind of left with Jackie, who I haven't heard back from in quite some time.
I reached out to her today because I realized I haven't heard from her either.
Okay.
In a while, but we can certainly touch base. And just for new folks, in terms of the budget, a lot of the budget that we had allocated, so we did hire Jackie Skaman to come in and do some work with us for this project, and basically she was going to prepare and have all these workshops ready to go so that we didn't have to be event planners and all those things that come with that kind of stuff, as well as having prizes. So you may have seen some posts shared where we made a donation to the food bank, if you completed a survey, those kind of things. So she was kind of the point person for all of that. So we did use some budget for that, but the workshops did not take place, and any sort of food venue costs were not used. So yeah, basically that budget hasn't really been used.
Yeah.
So something to keep in mind as well.
So yeah, at the moment, based on what's already been passed through our committee and approved in terms of a budget for this project, there's $3,100 remaining. And that's separate from the budget that was approved to pay Jackie. Now, the reason, so I haven't heard from Jackie in a while, and the reason that I hadn't reached out to her was because, in time for this meeting, was because I was taking a look at her contract and actually coordinating something like that, so it was quite outside the scope of her project, or of her contract. She had indicated that she was sort of comfortable with that, but I do think that if that's something we would like her to do, we probably need to rework that contract. And I think that a conversation that we need to have tonight is whether or not we really want to move forward with these community conversations, because if we do, great, and we have her to do that, but if not, I think it's probably a matter of either substantially reworking that contract to encompass the development of the asset map, which I'm not sure is necessary. I don't think there's that much work really to be done if somebody or a few people here are willing to take it on, or potentially talking about dissolving that contract and settling up with the work that she's done. And just kind of, but that's not for me to say. I just think that conversation needs to be had tonight. But that's kind of where that project is at the moment.
So that contract was originally for what, $1,500, is that correct?
It's a good question. I have it right here.
Something
It's about that,
Yeah.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think about half of it has been paid out. I would have to discuss with her whether she feels as though it's set,
Sure.
like whether she
Yeah.
has done more work past the point that she's been paid, or
Yeah.
whether or not she's comfortable with what she's been paid thus far. But,
Yeah.
but
And she's been keeping track of that for you guys.
yes,
Right.
yeah, she has. I'm sure she would have that information. I do have the contract right here. If we want a specific number on what it was.
So just to clarify, Jackie's contract, like the idea is that we're just delaying the community conversations until it's safe to hold them?
That was the reason that we
That
haven't
was
done
the
anything
original.
about this contract
Yeah.
to begin with. The conversation now, I think, is whether we would like to continue with that, whether we would like to ask her to adopt or adapt it to be an online thing, or whether we would like to say, no, we're not going to move forward with this. We'll just get because I think we can do the asset map and have that tool for people and use it in a really great way without doing these community engagement pieces, as much as it would be lovely to have done them.
The
That's-
other thing is that when she and I met at the beginning of the summer to come back to this work, when I finally could breathe from COVID stuff, she and I had kind of outlined what we could translate those the workshops into like almost a webinar series and actually touch on some of the topics that we as a council continue to talk about and frame them in a way that's like learn and celebrate or grow, build, and support, some of the themes that we talk about.
Mhm.
So I really see awesome potential in that direction if we did online, but it would require a conversation here and require a conversation with her to rework that contract, and if she's available this fall. I know she was waiting for some potential opportunities. I think she was really excited and passionate about this project, so, but, yeah.
So, yeah, those are, I think, the decisions that need to be made.
So what format is the asset map in now?
A map, basically. So
Like an
we-
online.
A hard map or electronic?
Electronic,
Okay.
yeah, an
It-
interactive
It's
map.
easily updated?
Yeah, fairly. So it's basically based off of the Excel, a slightly modified version of the Excel document that was prepared by the committee that then, say, every 6 months could be updated and then just fed into the map. Yeah.
Well, I would certainly agree with Megan that moving toward an electronic type of webinar series would make a whole lot more sense.
And I think the purpose of the consultations was to get feedback, but also to engage a greater number of people in the process. So it was sort of a twofold thing. So I think it's really worthwhile to go forward with it, but with the idea to try and get a broader audience than you might get just
So one of the concerns I would have, and I just, based on the data we've already collected, would be reaching, sort of marginalized individuals within our community that probably have a lot that we need to hear. And I don't know that a webinar format would be the way to achieve, gather that information. I'm not saying I have the solution to that. I'm just saying, I think
That's something
a webinar
that's
format is a great way to engage a lot of our community, but I think that there's still this proportion of our community that we won't be able to connect with, and I think that they're really important.
Absolutely. And the
part of
data showed, the report that you
Absolutely,
and Jeff
yeah,
pulled
exactly.
together clearly
Yeah,
showed that.
yeah, the data
That's
that we've
something
collected
I've
so
thought about a
far.
lot. One, I don't think it's a solution, and I don't know how you would approach this, but
Yeah.
incentives, like honoring people's time, those lived
Yeah.
experience groups, if you're looking to get them to contribute, you always need to honor their time in some way, and so, but I don't know what that looks like. Is it grocery gift cards? Is it gas cards? Is that something that
And where do we make those
council were able to
connections?
do that?
Yeah.
And how do you actually get that to them? How do you get them to know about the things? I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but we do have money that could be used in those senses, but I just don't know
Yeah.
if that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should, I agree with everyone else. I think it would be a great idea to proceed with webinars. I think that we really do need that community input and feedback. But as I said, that with webinar, it's just, there are people in our communities that don't have access to internet or computers.
Maybe there's a blended approach that could be taken
Yeah.
now that we are allowed to gather. I mean, you don't really probably want more than 20 people in a group anyway, so if we can find a community hall and find like one person who can identify other people who would fall into that community, or 2 or 3 people to invite 2 or 3 people, and then we say honor their time with the gift card. Like maybe there can be a blend, like two approaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I think the webinars are a great idea. And I also wonder, like, the capacity of the libraries at this point. Sometimes the libraries are really good, like, with, like,
Absolutely, yeah.
they're like that access point for people that don't have access to the internet or, like, the technical skills. So that's a possibility, but I don't know what kind of programming they're doing right now. But I agree. I think something needs to happen. Still needs to happen in person in order to catch those groups, because I think it's just not going to happen if you try to throw it on social media or something.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that. That being said, the webinars sound like a great idea.
Yes.
Yeah, really, really good.
Yeah, I think we got a little carried away when we were brainstorming on
No, I
this.
think it's
Um,
fantastic.
but
I feel like
I'm
that could accomplish other like
Yeah.
visibility for a group and things
there's-
like that.
yeah,
There's all kinds of
yeah.
reasons
an
to do it.
important conversation.
Yeah, I think that that's a
But
really
I
great
feel
idea. Absolutely.
Like we were discussing these community conversations and in particular kind of identifying groups that we were missing and not hearing from, so.
One other thing too to consider as a group might be, and it's something that we often talk about in health promotion is how to access these groups in not a tokenism kind of way, but to generate, and service providers actually provide a really good perspective from, it might be people who work as social workers in a shelter or what have you, but and I'm happy to use some of the community partners that we would work with, but I think a blended approach really is what it sounds like what I'm hearing, and I think that would be a component of that blended approach that may lend itself to get more data too, because they know what the gaps are, and some of us might be in the room too.
So should we maybe then talk to Jackie again? And I think it sounds like we might need to revisit the contract, like there might need to be an amendment.
Yeah,
and some amendments made to that contract.
I agree, and I think if she's available, she did indicate previously, like if we were to be continuing with this, even in the online form, like she was comfortable with the contract as is. She may feel differently. I just think we need to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Is this a contract that the council?
it was signed by Karen, I believe. So it's between the Food Council and Jackie. So I guess it would be a matter of probably Bernie and I, or Karen and I.
Well, I'd say you and Bernie, and just making an amendment to the contract.
Yeah, just
Not
having
to draft a whole new contract, I would imagine.
No, and she had drafted the contract herself, so it would just be a matter of if she wanted to make some tweaks.
So we laid out some outcomes, measurable outcomes.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
So I have it up here. That she was very specific.
It's very, very
Like,
specific.
incredibly
It was,
specific.
well, I think everyone has a copy of it though.
And
Yeah.
we can recirculate it after our
Yeah,
conversations with Jackie.
recirculate.
Yeah, I think we'll revisit it with her and then we can
Yeah.
table it to everybody, but it was incredibly specific.
Yeah.
But obviously,
She's
short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, and I mean, it was, yes, I mean, we looked at it carefully, and there wasn't much that she missed.
No.
I don't think she missed anything. So she could just modify those, those community elements that she had originally.
Yeah, and so if she's available, we'll have her move forward with it. Is that the?
Yeah, and we're focusing on just doing the online
No.
webinar.
So blended.
Blended.
It would be blended. I think it would be offered. I assume then based on that, we would have small groups in person. It would be sort of recorded and then we would broadcast that, or like we would do an interactive component online. I guess these would be things for Jackie to
Yeah,
get into.
and that might be something, since you two have sort of brainstormed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I'm still happy,
Yeah.
for the new folks I was using, because the plan originally, because I had this background in asset mapping, was that, I would kind of take some of the community engagement on for this, but I wasn't keen to do the event planning, and that's why we brought Jackie in to do that part, and then we kind of worked together on that front. But I'm able to use, I have discussed with my manager through work to use some of these hours, because this is something that I would do anyway, and so I'm happy to pour more hours into that. I don't mind. It gives me something other than COVID to talk about, so which is awesome. And so maybe if best case scenario, she's available and willing to continue with this work, maybe she and I can touch base with Katrina too, but come back with the next meeting with a plan of what that blended approach could look like, and then we can approve and go ahead with that.
Yeah, I think maybe a fairly specific plan that the council can approve at the next meeting with kind of like an outline of even speakers and dates and things like that potentially. And does that sound?
That sounds ideal.
And we can revisit via email perhaps if Jackie is not available and come up with an alternate approach. But yeah, I mean that will get complicated. So hopefully let's all just hope she's available.
Yeah, let's hope she is.
But yeah, okay. So that sounds good.
Just in terms of her availability, would it be worthy to say, like, do we want to have this wrapped up by the end of March or the end of December? Like, because that might influence her answer in terms of availability.
I think the sooner better. What do people feel is a date?
Sooner the better.
This has been dragging on
For a long
time. I mean, and not because it's anyone's fault, just there were some interruptions that were beyond our control.
Yeah, and I think
She'll probably feel the same way, I assume.
Yeah.
And yet getting people together physically takes time. Like even if it takes a month to confirm the contract, then like the actual event planning part could take about a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's find out how much, what time she has available, and if it's.
When could she have it completed by if she were to
Yeah.
take it on? Like,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
That's a great approach.
But I would say we want to get it moving as quickly as.
Yeah.
I think ideally it would be great to have it done by year end,
Yeah, I think so too.
December
would be-
31st being
yeah.
year end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, should we, or can we approve, like, if she wants to get started on things before the next meeting? Because I know it'll probably be 4 or 5 weeks until our next meeting.
Right.
Can we approve anything by email, or do we need to meet in person?
Well, we can approve by email. I mean, we also have, I believe, so at the last meeting you guys approved. What did you approve?
Oh, we,
technically?
yes,
Yeah,
we did approve that
I
as
don't
long
have
as it's
anything.
within the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
that we're
existing
fine to
budget.
go ahead,
Yeah, I
and-
thought that we did something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, and
But
I-
if it exceeds that, we would need
We'd
to
have to
call
come
for-
back.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
could call for an emergency.
And we've approved 1,500, that's already been approved by council for the original contract?
Correct, for
That's
Jackie's
still
pay.
standing.
Yeah, exactly, so we still have that money and we still have $3,100 to
We
put
still have the
towards
like the,
whatever.
there was
we need.
$5,000 allocated to this project.
It was, and then so I think 1,600 was for Jackie, the remaining was for the community conversations. We obviously spent some of that
For promotions and food banks.
Yeah.
on things that didn't happen because of COVID, and we have 3,100 left. Not, and then Jackie's payment would be separate.
So in the next week or two, she could work on the how, and then the council could approve that.
Well, we
I don't
can
think
even
we
just share it to you.
I don't
with
think
you.
we need
We don't need to.
There's no approval needed if it's within the budget,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we can obviously share it with you all so that we
Yeah.
don't do a ton of work and then you're like, I don't like that.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I feel like you guys know the spirit of what
I-
we're
yeah.
trying to do, and I would just say, like,
I just say
especially
go
if we
ahead.
want-
I mean,
we
that would
all
be
want
my
it to
thought.
happen. I feel like we could just
So
say
we'll
do
just
it.
I
tell her to
agree.
run, you and her to run.
Just let her, if she's
Stay in
available, I'd
contact
say let her run with it.
with
That would be my
Absolutely.
vote.
And
Yeah.
then,
And if she's not, then let us know.
Yeah, but
quickly.
yeah,
The webinars should be doable. The other things, because of COVID-19, may not. But
Yeah.
if we stick to the webinar, we know that'll get done.
yeah.
I think small group conversations would be doable.
Oh, they're definitely doable,
And
yeah.
especially if you have a budget.
Today it is. In
Okay.
4 weeks, it might not be.
Yeah.
So if we
Yeah.
just,
That's a front of mind for me
Yeah.
too, but we can work around that as it comes.
And I think there's probably a way to do it where we don't have a lot invested in those you know what I mean? Like if we use city facilities, we're not paying to rent a facility, we're not gonna lose any fees. If we don't cater them, or we, you know, if we incentivize or do last minute catering, like we won't have committed any money to that. I think there's a way to, and if we're doing it to target marginalized groups, we could probably do it with limited promotions in terms, like Megan saying, reaching out to specific groups
Specific,
to
yeah.
recruit.
Absolutely, and finding those spaces, like the library or city facilities.
Yeah.
And even if we make investments in grocery gift cards,
We'll find
we'll find a way for those to be used.
Yeah.
So I don't see there
Absolutely.
being any
Yeah.
issue with her proceeding.
Like, I know it's not the same, but could she not just have a backup as like a phone conversation with people?
I mean,
Essentially
I
do
would
that.
for sure have a backup anyway.
Yeah.
Because
Hmm.
I would be making sure the plan's approved, so.
Yeah,
there would be
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
We'll
so
keep that in mind.
yeah. So
Yeah,
you'll,
everybody's like used to being flexible at this point, so.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So we'll leave it up to Megan and Jackie. She'll stay in touch with the rest of us, and
we'll be available.
they'll give us an update at the next meeting, but hopefully be off and running by then.
yeah, that'd be great.
Thank
It'd be nice to pack this one
Thank
up.
you.
It would be.
I would love for it to be done.
I think we all.
So, and then we'll also stay in touch about the asset map, because I do think
Yeah.
actually what Tyler's done, like, if nothing else was done for these conversations, it would
Yeah.
still be fine.
Yeah.
But him and I can communicate about that as well.
And not to drag this on, but Jackie and I won't forget to talk about the survey component as well. We did a survey for it was a last minute thing that Jess and I worked on right before we started this. And we got some really great data that was timely right before the pandemic. And so we would want to add some COVID pandemic food security related questions potentially to that. So we won't forget about that. I hope it doesn't.
Yeah, I think, we did discuss that the last time, that we had this sort of this pre-COVID baseline.
Yeah.
Yes.
That will be really interesting to proceed with that, with some kind of a survey element for sure.
Yeah. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so then the only other thing we sort of have ongoing would be the work that Colleen has been doing around a local food definition. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So I think it was the last meeting where there was all the talk about supporting local businesses with the COVID, and it got us to thinking that we really should have a definition of local as it pertains to food. And so then I looked, and I can say I did not do like deep and extensive research, so I apologize for that, but I did find, I got some really interesting information from Vancouver and then from Toronto, and then found it's a food procurement policy toolkit for the city. So I think if we're thinking about informing policy and the city as a leader in certain things, then having a definition of local is the first step in terms of like food procurement policy for the city. So then Robert Godfrey, who was part of the council, who's the head of the Federation of Agriculture, he provided the information, which makes it complicated because PEI, we certainly have lots of eggs, we have lots of chickens, we have lots of pigs, but they go off island, and whether we get our own back or not, we never really know. So then, our definition of local will need to take into account those kinds of things. So, it's really clear if it's PEI blueberries, if it's PEI blueberry pie, how does that look? If it's other, like the mixed foods, prepared foods. Toronto had an interesting criteria, so I had a really long day. It was talking and thinking. I'm not used to doing that. Toronto's was, it may not be local ingredients, but 80% of the value of the product comes from, I would say, labor and activities within the city of Toronto. So how you measure that is something that I couldn't get my head around and didn't really go there until we kind of had that kind of conversation. So and I don't know if anybody had a chance to go through what was circulated, which I could do for you if you want. Or we can.
The point of it, though, is for businesses to identify that they're producing local product. And then would that be an incentive for people to then buy from them?
As well as the city, like the city is aiming to look to support sustainability around food. So if they're holding festivals and events, that even their own purchasing is looking at it that way.
Yeah, okay.
But then, as I was coming here, I'm thinking, well, we also have a lot of restaurants that are promoting local, and what is there? When we think about what proportion of foods, or is it just that they are selecting local providers, producers when there is the option? Like some guidance around that kind of thinking. I think Phil might have some thoughts on that. You've talked a lot about local buying and the impact that can have on the economy. And how do we kind of harness that so people don't think that, well, I'm buying my local bananas from the local...
From Norman's,
From Norman's, it's a local business, and that's valid. As opposed
Totally,
to
yeah.
getting them, delivered from Costco in Moncton. But it's...
Or buying figs from Norman's, or real pita, or something, there are all these things that...
But where's the essence, what's the essence of what we are trying to achieve?
Exactly, I think,
Going back to agriculture and fish, and using as much of that as possible when you can, to the degree that you can, and if not, you're not buying puff pastry dough, baking it and calling it a PEI product. Or maybe you are, because 80% of the labor or the value is going into that. It's a complicated question, so
Because there's three components. There's the production, there's like PEI raised, PEI grown, PEI produced.
Yeah.
And if all three are there, then that's great.
That's easy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's, but then you're excluding people that are producing local stuff.
Yeah.
But the product that they're producing can't be like, if they're making banana bread, obviously there's no local bananas.
Right.
So.
But they are, if they're making it from scratch and using PEI eggs and
Yeah,
milk or something to that effect. Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why it's not a defined term. Because it's very difficult to oversee, and then when you're defining terms, how are you going to regulate that?
Yeah.
How are you going to ensure that people are playing within, like Burger Love's meant to be PEI beef, but everyone uses Cargill product. So, it's like, how do you regulate that? Yeah. That's one of the harder parts when you're defining terms.
And there was, I wouldn't say it was BC, but there was some concern that if you're identifying local, that you're contravening trade agreements.
Yes, that's the main thing.
And so then they were having points on sustainability.
Yeah.
And there was 3 factors in there where they were more heavily weighted because they couldn't say local. Like
They
those
went
are
from
maybe,
like sustainable, like from an environmental perspective.
And I think it was
And
from
so
like-
like buy local was underneath that because it was like reduced
reduced
miles or,
transportation.
yeah.
Well, PEI is unique because we're an insanely small province, whereas like we're closer to Ottawa than Thunder Bay is. So if you identify it as being provincially produced as local, then it's, the distance doesn't really make sense. But with PEI, it does. But when you broaden that out to the Maritimes, then it like affects businesses that, because if a business wants to ship over the province, then they have to be federally regulated, which puts a disadvantage to smaller operations that can't get that federal certification. So we're lucky because we're so small, but the majority of the agriculture here is for export.
Except for the very small, like the farmer's market.
Yeah, like
scale.
CSAs and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it's promoting those avenues more so than, but the production aspect is very important as well.
I think there's a university in BC that has really interesting procurement. It must be UBC.
I think it's
I
UVic.
think it is you.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, it's you.
With their procurement policies? I feel like if we're going to suggest a route for municipal purchasing policy, which I think is a really good idea, I feel like it could be more around sustainability. I think that that's the route that they took, and like local can be involved in that, and like around sustainability with social sustainability and that kind of stuff around the labor. It's important to purchase local for that reason. So that could be the way that we go about it. I think that that's the way that other institutions have done it, from what I remember last time I looked at it a few years ago.
And didn't Dalhousie has a local procurement policy, I think, too.
I honestly didn't get there.
There's a number of, on that note, that's like one of our big projects for the winter, like it's just basically building a sustainable procurement policy for the city.
Oh.
Cool.
So-
Yeah, so it would be.
Love to read a draft, whenever you guys.
We'll review it.
Which, if food counts, that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up. So this is sort of like been recently, we've been kind of strategically planning for the year, and so it won't necessarily touch on the definition of local, and I don't know how much food will even come into it in the end specifically, so if you guys want that lens, that may be something you have to provide, but that research will be being done.
I think that's a fantastic role for us. If you guys are developing that anyway, I think that's a great spot
For us to insert ourselves into that.
And we can help them kind of be like, okay, what does this mean for the food that we're purchasing? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's
Totally.
awesome.
So, so I mean, it's me basically doing that, so you'll be working really closely with the person doing it. I have an intern that started Monday from UPEI that started doing some of the preliminary research, doing a review and a report, and then I'll be taking it over once my schedule clears up a bit later.
So, would it be good to take a look at maybe some of our local institutions? And by local, I mean regional. So think places like, I know Dalhousie has a local food procurement
Yeah.
policy. I know that, the agricultural college always did, but now I expect that they probably, so maybe having a look at what those procurement policies look like. Yeah.
So I guess I would say that the decision that needs to be made now is like if you want to table this and revisit us as we go, and I can keep people in the loop, or if you guys want to take on a research component at the moment around food that can then be integrated later, I just think just whatever direction you guys want to take is.
So I guess as a council, are we interested in pursuing that? I think that's
definitely a question.
question A.
Yeah.
Because it's not simple.
It's not.
It's not
simple at all.
complex.
If your
No,
research
I
certainly
feel
look
like
at that.
the sustainability aspect is going to inform a a lot of, like I said, I think our role is to help
Yeah.
like the city decipher what the sustainability purchasing
Yeah.
looks like for food. So I feel like we should let you guys do the main piece. And if your intern has any questions about food or any specifics about food, we can provide those examples or help them do that specific research.
Yeah, that's great. And I will, she's just sort of interested in gaining general exposure, so I'll probably bring her along to the next meeting and maybe she can provide a little
Yeah, I get it.
overview. If I don't know where she'll be at. I mean, I've met her once, so we'll see. Like, you never know where she'll be at a month from now, but yeah.
So I did find that procurement toolkit. So it could be
Is it
worthwhile.
this one?
Yeah.
The local sustainable food procurement?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely worthwhile. I'll have
Really
to help
helpful.
her.
And
Yeah.
that was
incredibly
Yeah.
helpful,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it was
That's
the-
a lot of good information.
Reduced carbon footprint, ecological, humane, and socially responsible, healthy, and fresh. Those were the 3 criteria.
Yeah.
So, because they didn't want to get into local
Yeah, percentage of
origin
yeah.
issues. So, yeah, that was a different way of framing
Yep.
Just flagging too that, like, I'm just going back to the notes that Jackie and I had made some months ago. One of the sort of themes, if we were to do a potential webinar series, may be something like buy and celebrate, and really we grounded that in supporting local. And so maybe that's a conversation that could come up there,
Yeah.
where we
Yes.
maybe we have a panelist talking about what food procurement means and what local means and those kind of things, or maybe there's an open-ended discussion. So as we move forward with that, that might be an opportunity to engage community in that way, on that. Yeah, it's a very complex piece.
Yeah.
And who knows what you might gather from those community conversations in terms of valuable input too. You know, there might be some expertise out there.
it. So Bernie, the people that participated in the coupon program at the market, would they be people who would be interesting people to interview?
Certainly, they would be part of the demographics to talk to.
The difficult to reach
Yeah.
folks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has there been any talk about definitions around the price point for local? Because often local is more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's explaining why it's more expensive, because it's often a more sustainable product. So you're not able to, so the producer is paying for those externalities in production, which then they have to recoup because they're not able to consolidate and use mass market tactics.
And I think Bernie's program was about providing a small discount for people to shop at the market.
Okay, yeah.
Is that, help me out here, Bernie.
A portion of it was discounted. It's the true cost of growing food. Trying to get people to understand that it's, the price may be higher, but the benefits can outweigh that cost.
Very hard to,
If you have the money.
especially
Yeah.
meat.
That's right, yeah. Actually, some of the items that we had that we have are highly discounted by those producers. The meat was one of them. It's not there wasn't a solution. It was more to get people to pay attention to, there's a problem with food security in our city. And it was just one way to try and help. By no means do we call it a solution to the problem. And we say it's a healthy harvest program. Some things may not be exactly local because of all the different externalities that we were talking about here tonight. It is hard to have a definition for local. I like the sustainability slant on it to try and come up with a statement, a guiding statement from the local, from the food council on that, as opposed to here's a strict definition and that's what we have to follow. They're more guiding statements of whatever we find in the research. I browsed the toolkit and it's there's a lot of good information in there. It's to try and put all those things together. That's not my wheelhouse to take all that and do it. It's hopefully with a committee that can sit down and present something. We're talking about the why here, and then the how, or the why, and then the how's going to get done outside of the meetings that we have. I think it's worth following up what Morgan was saying. If the city has any, they're working on the sustainability part, if there's anything attached to food, there's a lot of people around this table that can help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's, I mean, it's already on my radar, so I may, you know, sort of built into my projects for the year and then bring you on as.
So that could be like an ongoing
Yeah.
item on the agenda.
Yeah.
It comes and goes.
Yeah. Kind of once I think we've got some idea of the shape it's going to take, bringing it to you guys for review and input and advice. Yeah, I think that sounds great.
Thanks, Colleen, for all the work.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't feel I did very well, but we started this conversation anyway.
Yeah, so it's good, and I think there'll be some really good resources for us to review as
Good.
well within the city, and, which is exactly what we need.
So there's no action to be taken on this item?
No, I don't think so. I think it'll just be out. I mean, I guess if anything, there's an action for me to come bring it back to you.
Yeah.
You've requested to provide input on this at a later date when there's something to provide input on.
Thanks, Katrina. Next item, so this could be a little more action-oriented for the council. We're looking at maybe doing a brainstorming, planning, goal setting for the coming year in the context of, you know, we keep hearing it over and over again, COVID-19. So trying to focus on realistic goals. I was looking at the terms of reference, and number 2, our function, there's 6 functions in our terms of reference. If maybe that could be a bit of a guiding platform for us to try and come up with an activity that may or may not bring the council to action. It could be something that we have to work on and it brings us to action. It could be whatever brains around the table here come up with activities and projects. Do we want to do like a parking lot where we can throw ideas and
I can
discuss
type
the
it up.
merits of them?
Can I interject for a sec?
Yeah.
I think we had we had talked on and off about like doing some kind of strategic planning exercise, because I feel like we had come with like multiple ideas for different projects and stuff like that, but ultimately we kept talking about, well, what are our priorities, I guess.
Mhm.
So is that worth discussing again, or?
I think that's why we had put the conversation off, because we were waiting until the terms were up and then with the new council to maybe bring that forward as an item, and I think that would touch on this, and we could ensure that any other ideas that we brainstorm fit into something like that. And I think in the COVID context, it's reasonable to outsource I mean, we have money, and if we're not doing things gathering in person and events look different, maybe it is about outsourcing a contract to do a strategic plan and work with us to develop that so that we have concrete items. You know, this is the policy sphere, this is the project sphere, and I know we had a lot of conversations about how they're the same but they're different, and you end up kind of doing all these projects, but what's the point of them if they aren't grounded in policy and in the ideas and the functions of the terms of reference. So,
And I think on the shared Google thing in there, there's a lot of ideas for projects and
Yes.
activities, if I recall.
Totally.
That's right.
but not a lot of
But
policy action.
Yeah,
which
not a
is
lot
what
of
we
like
had talked
cohesion
about.
necessarily,
Yeah,
even those
cohesion and
projects. I mean, I think
direction.
that was
Yeah.
what our stumbling block was, that, you know, we were filled with great ideas in
Yeah.
terms of project ideas, and, you know, we were receiving them even from, you know, external, you know, community members, but it was just, you know, how do we identify which ones are the real priorities and the ones that we should be, you know, sort of moving forward with. And that was kind of what brought us to the idea that we needed to have, you know, a strategic planning session.
And for the new members, I feel like we also potentially went in the direction where we were waiting on a little bit of direction from the Sustainability Council. What's it?
Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee.
Thank you. But then revisited the terms of reference and realized we were supposed to, like,
Advise
the idea that
them.
we
Yeah,
go to
that's right.
them
Yeah.
with suggestions. So I think the strategic planning, like within the group, is really, it might be the first step.
So I do just want to weigh in on that just with one thing,
Yeah.
in that, it's not that I necessarily think it's a bad idea. I do think though, so one, it will have to go through that standing committee to gain approval to spend the money, and I will just give one word to the wise in that I do think what they really want to see is action. I think there's been a concern across all city advisory boards that there's not been enough action, and they really want to see sort of like concrete things happening. So I just think that if we're going to take that to them, we might want to couple it with something at the same time.
So
Like
basically, we need to have a project?
I'm thinking, I'm not saying that you have to, I'm just
Okay.
saying that.
So we need to come up with a project tonight?
No,
Oh,
not
okay.
necessarily, but I mean, but one thing I do want to bring to the table too is that, well, we can get through this first, but there is a waste reduction week coming up, and food waste is a component of that. So even just like being involved in that and doing a small piece of it, and there's some things on the go that I can touch on if we want to talk about that. But I guess my point is just that I think that not that strategic planning is a bad idea, and certainly we can take that to them. But that I think that they, and I'm not saying that I support them in this, it's just that I think that there's kind of been this blanketed view across council that some of the city advisory boards are functioning as well as they could be.
Well, we are quite aware of that.
Yes, and
we're
it's not an
doing it.
isolated, not an isolated thing, and I just think that we had a really good discussion about it actually at not our last meeting, but the meeting before, and I presented some of the things that you guys have accomplished, and they did seem quite happy, but I just think we just want to make sure that they know that the function is being upheld.
And I think it is interesting when you look at what the functions are, is advise and make recommendations on food system issues, analyze, influence, create policy. Like it's that kind of action that's sort of 1, 2, and 3, and then later on it's create or support existing programs and services that address the needs of the community, including program design, fundraising, execution, and education. But like it was created as an advisory thing,
Yeah.
but everybody wants to see the action.
Yeah.
Could we not not argue, but could we present the case that, we are limited in what kind of programming that we can do currently, and that we do have online, we do have these other
That's true.
things that we've adapted, but it might be like, even though we recognize that people want to see action, that we thought it would be a safe one.
And what do we mean by action? Like, what is it that we, I guess.
Because I know like last year I'm going to say, didn't accept a number of proposals because we felt it didn't fit within the mandate. And I'm going to say that library breakfast program, just as an example, wanted funds. And we examined that and thought, well, it doesn't really fit into that create a sustainable system.
As a one-off.
It's a one-off. It's yet another Band-Aid. That's Colleen's opinion. But is that what they want? Is that what they think we're doing?
Is that what we should be
Funding
doing
those
in their
one-off
perception?
No, that's not what
Yeah.
they think. I think, I'm not saying they have all the accurate information. I do think that a conversation that we had, as I say, a little bit ago helped with this. I'm just saying, I think we just want to be mindful that whether it doesn't necessarily, like action, I think can be any of the variety of things listed in those terms of reference.
Okay.
But,
In my mind, action could be making a statement or I'm going to look at the function, a recommendation to council that we have more edible gardens. Phil has brought that up several times, about edible gardens in the community. That's a recommendation that that's recommendations that we're giving to council on food security and sustainability. It could be, we support having front yard gardens, like as opposed to green grass. That's an action. And we're actually, but we have to be able to discuss it as a group and say, yes, we agree, and it doesn't always have to be we're meeting and doing this activity at this date and a place, and having to there's a lot of capacity building there, and it takes a lot of energy. It doesn't have to be that only.
yeah.
So I just bring it up so we can look at all different types of action as a council. To feel like we're doing something, we're moving forward. even though if it's just a recommendation, it is something on paper that we done, and it brings us closer to the goals that we have in our charter. They're a little, sometimes we go after the big goal, but we've missed all the smaller goals to get there. Which one would be also the strategic planning?
Yeah.
This is part of all that.
And I do think we can make the argument that that's an important component. I'm not saying that I don't think they'll go for it. It's just.
I think, and I think might have been my very first meeting with you folks actually, and we came back and talked, we were all in the projects, and we came back from like kind of that bird's eye and talked about policy. And then there was like a huge debate about which is what and how there's synergy between the two of them. But really what you're saying, Bernie, is these recommendations would be the policy action that we do. We're not implementing the policy at the municipal level, but we're recommending that city council does. And I think there's huge value in that at the municipal level. And I think it's something that we absolutely need to be doing. And I think that probably the strategic plan would help us do it in a way that isn't just like, okay, here's 5 random things that we think, because I think we have a huge list of those things,
Yes.
and they're all evidence-based, and there's a huge number of them. I mean, I think I was writing nonstop that day on a whiteboard, and
Yes.
there's no shortage of them, and that wasn't comprehensive. But I think probably, and so I don't know what I'm saying here, but I think it's that we all have those policy ideas, and I think those need to be going forward as recommendations for sure. And I just don't know, is it the chicken or the egg here? Like,
Yeah.
I think the strat plan would inform a process for that, like, oh, it's timely right now to be talking about food security because
Yep.
of CERB and COVID-19, and how do we address those things at the municipal level? Maybe not so much the front yard gardens, but come springtime, that's something that's timely and that would help to move an agenda forward. And if we have that community, the other piece is the community groundswelling, like if we have people on the ground really voicing that to their counselors, like, why can't I do this? I want to have a backyard garden or a backyard chicken coop. Like,
Yeah.
why can't I do this? If they're hearing that from the counselors and then from us, or counselors are hearing that and then they're hearing that from us. So I don't really know what I'm saying here. I think it's everything that we're all saying, but
No, but I think it's a
I
good
don't know what
point
the action
in
is
that
other than
pitch to the counselors. It's that there's all these things, and the food system is a very complicated thing, and that's one thing too that isn't always reflected to them, in that this council is quite different from some of the others, and
Yeah.
it's very like food is such a big area, whereas a lot of the others are a bit more narrowed in, and so I think that's a reasonable pitch to make to them.
So could the action be pitching to them that we would like to have the approval for, I'm just kind of trying to pull all my thoughts here together, the strat plan, something to do with that. We are shifting everything that we were doing this year to online.
Yeah.
We're going to be supporting some of the local food procurement
Yeah.
pieces. While that's not going to be like a next week thing, it's going to be an ongoing thing. And then the other actions will come from strat planning.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that
That's what people
fair
are
to-
interested in.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can beef up some language for the action on what the.
I mean, if our goal is to provide, policy recommendations, I think,
Yeah.
that we just can't, pull stuff from thin air and say, oh, well, let's make a recommendation that backyard chicken should be allowed.
Yeah.
And this is
I
why.
agree.
Because I mean, we could, we've all got our own bias, and
Yeah,
what does,
yeah.
how does that impact community, right?
Yeah.
And who says it's the best one to recommend? Like, we can debate it amongst ourselves as a group, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
like, what is the outcome? What's the long-term plan,
Yeah.
I guess?
Yeah, and I do think as much as policy, it'll be an ongoing discussion, I guess, how you want to make those recommendations, because you'll need some things behind them, and whether you
Oh,
put
absolutely,
the work into developing the policy and recommending
Yeah.
the team as a whole, or you're recommending
That's the whole
the
thing,
city
like,
put that
if
resource
we-
into it, or.
If we choose like a recommendation to make, there is some research that you have to
Yeah.
back
Oh, yeah,
up with.
yeah,
So I
absolutely.
personally don't want to delve into a couple hours of work justifying a recommendation that isn't the right time, or it's,
Yeah.
or if we can't really back it up as a community to say, like, we're saying that this is priority, versus if we were saying, this is the right time, this is the right,
Yeah.
that we really think is important, we've been hearing it from, people in the community and we think, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think then that the first, if that's, you'll have to decide if that's what you want to do. So that's kind of the first thing. And if it is what you want to do, then it would be a matter of somebody taking on, we need to figure out how much it's going to cost and figure out how to pitch it to the committee. And that would go, we just had a committee meeting, so it would be a month, not quite a month until they meet. But we can have everything lined up before that approval.
We gathered some information through that survey process, though, did we not, Megan? That
Yeah.
identified, community, but there were some key themes that, from the community, I think.
I mean, in terms of like pricing around
Like a
strategic planning,
consultant
that kind of
or
thing.
like-
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm aware of that, but I'm just thinking like in terms of community priorities.
Yeah, we have-
Within the food system, I think there already are some of those elements, that we
Yeah.
are, we are aware of. I mean, I totally get what you're saying in terms of providing a rationale for suggesting that we'd like to do some strategic planning before we.
Yeah. No, I think it's not that terribly difficult to farm that rationale. I just think it's a matter of someone taking it on.
So we're back.
So I
we're
think
back
basically
to-
the decision is now has to be made as to whether that's what the council would like to do, if the council would like to do strategic planning, and if so, one or two members taking on kind of writing up a rationale, which I don't think will be a particularly onerous job, and then also probably going out for quotes on a facilitator of the strategic planning so that we can present numbers to the committee.
Before that, do the new members have anything
Yes,
to say?
thank you, Megan.
This is kind of an ongoing thing,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if you're feeling like, we've definitely circled this a lot, in case you can tell.
I think.
It might be really nice to have like a fresh perspective on this.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
What are your expectations, I guess, yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I know, let's put everybody on the spot.
You don't have to respond.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
So if we have a couple of people who want to take that rationale,
I'm happy to work on the rationale, but I don't know that the costing of strategic planning, I've never been involved with one before, so I would need some help with that.
the cost would come, the ration, we'd have to, I think, we'd have to write a rationale for it, and then the cost would come afterwards once we go out for tenure or get
Yeah.
people.
You don't think we would need to have an estimate of how much we would be asking for from the committee?
I'm also completely inexperienced with strategic planning, so I'm not sure. I would assume, I'm not sure. Somebody would, I guess, one of the members of the council would need to basically, I think, agree to figure out how to go out for tender on this.
Yeah.
If we have a budget.
So do we have to have approval for a project even within the existing budget?
Sorry?
So if the strategic planning was part of the existing budget, we still need them to approve it?
Well, it hasn't been approved. Yes, even if it falls within the existing budget, it still needs to be approved. That's how we work.
Yeah, okay.
Then we have
all of us.
8,500 remaining for this year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, I know that I just spent $2,500 on a strategic plan just before COVID, so
25.
25 from Volume 18, who did the work with us initially here at the Food Council.
And I'm just curious, the strategic planning, now that we're in COVID-19, is it still developing? Is it happening?
The strategic plan that we did? Absolutely. I mean, they're kind of high level, right? They, it's COVID doesn't affect food production that much, right? You still have to produce food. So, I can't say that we haven't been, terribly impacted. Our farmers haven't been terribly impacted.
Yeah, I think,
In terms of it hasn't stopped operations or anything like that. They've still had to go to work every day. So yes,
I
it was very effective for us, regardless.
I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone, especially the new members, but I feel like all of us are doers and we really want to be doing things, but we kind of get stuck because we can't do the things because we don't know what priorities things are associated with, and we don't know what to move forward, and then it's kind of like we have this whole mosh pit of random ideas.
Yeah.
And we're all doers, and it's frustrating. And so I think that a plan would allow us, it's gonna be high level,
Yes.
but it may be like, these are the 4 functions of this council, and every single thing we recommend to the standing committee, I don't remember.
Yep.
Everything we recommend to the standing committee has to check at least one of those priorities in some way, and if it does, then we're fine to go. I think that's where I'm seeing this go, and as frustrating it is to keep talking about a plan. I think if we do a plan, then we'll be able to do the things that we want to do.
Yeah, but maybe to Bernie's point, like let's like I said, I'm happy to work on the rationale for this. Do you want to also plan an action today? Like, what are the things that are timely? Did you
Like
want
right
to
now.
prepare some kind of response to COVID-19? We could obviously say something about COVID-19, or for the waste reduction week. Like, is that something that you want to talk about tonight too? You want to just say like, okay, we'll apply to do strategic planning, put it as an action, get it off the agenda. Well, not get it off the agenda, but get it off the agenda for tonight, and talk about like an action.
It's up to the council. I'm just proposing ideas. I'm not here to make those decisions unilaterally. It's just throwing ideas out there and see what the council wants to do.
Is it possible to pull up the list of
All
the
those.
vomit list?
Of our approved projects.
All the projects from,
Any
I think there's multiple areas that could come from, what are you thinking?
Okay, I thought there was one spreadsheet.
I thought there was a spreadsheet that Jen had compiled.
Okay, I
for
was just trying to find it, and I don't.
The project
have the
committee there,
access to
yeah.
it.
And while we're finding that, you were just talking, Morgan, which made me think, would an action that we could do right now, this would kind of fit in with the education and advocacy component of what we do as a council, but are we in the business of doing like statements, like a one-pager that lives on the website, and like, this is what we have to say about the pandemic right now and how it's affecting our food system? Like, is that an action that we could think about to just get to the action level that you were talking about, Bernie?
That could be one, yeah. Like,
I don't know if that's where the business is at, but
I don't know if we're in the business.
it could be.
Could we be though? Are we allowed to?
Are we allowed to speak? I mean, because we
I
are
don't
sort of speaking on behalf of the city a
Yeah.
little bit.
Well, it would be approved by us and by our communications department.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you've been, I guess as staff, we are trusted to put out messaging around these things by the council. Like, we are trusted as authorities on the matter. Those things don't go through them. So if you were wanting to produce some sort of resource, it would come through staff and in our communications department, and you would be able to do that in the same way that we're able to as staff.
So if we're going to issue policy statements or position statements, I mean, again, that requires quite a bit of research, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't,
You know,
yeah, I mean, it's up to everybody. I don't know if, I mean, I think one thing Bernie and I talked about
yeah.
was just that maybe the council needs something a little bit fun.
Yeah. True.
Like what?
And I'm just wondering if
All the
that's,
fun things are not allowed, right?
Yeah.
I know, and I
Yeah.
do know that's really complicated.
Yeah, so,
but-
you know, I mean, what were you two thinking?
And that's what I was gonna ask.
You know, when you guys were talking about this.
Well, that's as far as we got.
It's like mystical fun.
The fun
We
thing,
remember.
the fun thing about being on the council is you've got all the other people bringing different perspectives. to
Yeah.
come up with these ideas. Sitting in my silo, farmers market, farmers, yes, all the food has been planted, it's coming out, but they're not selling as much as they did. There's lots of food, but they're not selling as much. It's an issue for the food system. Not that, I don't know if we can do a statement on that, but
Is that
that's an issue.
Is that an evidence? Like, I mean, because my experience is not that.
My experience is at the moment.
Yeah. So yeah.
So people are like asking, well, where else do I sell? So people are scrambling to try and find different markets to sell all their
Okay.
their product. Because you're not selling to the restaurants, what you did, right? Because now the restaurants aren't working at capacity. So, because I've had a lot of farmers at the markets that we never had in the past, because they lost their market share. I don't know what that means come winter. I was speaking with Phil. Phil was bringing up the ideas of how do we stock, cold storage, all this food potentially. I know we are okay here with COVID-19 at the moment, but I don't think we'll be okay forever. I'm not sure how well we'll be spared COVID-19. We may in a few weeks have an outbreak. My crystal ball is broken. I have no idea. But all those things, when you throw it into the food system, is there potential there for us to do something? Maybe there isn't. I'm scratching my head thinking maybe not. Other people around the table may have ideas around that. And it's fine if we don't. And I may be not looking at this properly, which is fine, and I hope I'm not. I hope I am looking at it, and things aren't going to happen.
So you bring up a point, like winter storage, like community freezers, those are things that actually came up in some of the survey responses, some of the conversations that Karen and I had at the interactions, and that as opposed to edible gardens and front yard gardens, maybe that's a timely thing to talk about and recommend as an action. And again, regarding the position statement, there's a lot of research that has to go behind this, but maybe that's something we do get in the business of doing, because there are timely things that happen. And maybe then we can back those up with a recommendation to the committees to do things.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to look at the broad agricultural, like we'd have to look beyond, farmers, market farmers, and look at the broader food production system. And, our beef producers, how is COVID affecting them? The prices have fluctuated quite a bit. Hogs, the lambs that are going in Ontario for prices that are, astronomical, right? They're very happy with the prices, and they're moving lambs out of here like, crazy. So it sort of depends on where in the food system you are, that and that informs sort of what you're thinking or what you know about the food system. So, but I think community freezers, like you talked about, or community cold storage, is something that did sort of percolate up as part of that conversation, and maybe that does require some further investigation. Like, where is the need? What does that look like? What investment will be required to make, to have that capacity or ability to stockpile food in the event of a pandemic or whatever. But
What does that mean for the Food Council?
Yeah.
What do we do with that if it is a reality? And that's what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, and then to me, it's like we need to establish where that reality exists. So that everything boils down to we need to get the information, the research to say here is what we need, where we need it, and how much of it we need, whatever it is. So what do we pick? What do we do the research on? How do we set a priority?
Yeah.
And I'd say I was trying to find that list, and I just can't stop looking.
Yeah.
Because there's a gazillion ideas. I did find an early email. It was the Food Secure Canada has some highlight types of things, and one of them is offering subsidies of various sorts to Canadians living with low income to increase access to sustainable foods. So, there's evidence to say that. You're saying there's excess at the farmer's market. We have an existing market basket program, whatever it is, even coupon program.
Like a healthy harvest.
Maybe that's a very solid thing to extend into the fall at a higher level where the greater number of participants are. I'm not quite sure how that works, but it would be kind of maybe filling a little bit into all those buckets. I don't know.
Should we, I like that idea a
Yeah,
lot. I
great
think
idea.
that, that could be like a possible action. Should we, not to, like, do we wanna just go ahead and like use our budget and help programs kind of extend, that meet our values, or should we kind of send out like a request for submissions, like people that are doing these types of programs, or should we just beef up the budget of people that are already doing them? Is the program ongoing at the market, right?
Well, we've extended it this year by
Okay.
quite a bit. We found some funds. I wouldn't say it does need more funding, but it's, I'm not here to ask for funding for this program. I'm just- I'm
No,
just-
we're not, no.
I
was
just think
thinking
it's
that.
concrete and
It's concrete, and I feel like
Yeah.
it's a better use of our time to partner with organizations that will do.
That are already doing the work.
That are already doing programming, that are probably really needing
That
dollars,
needs
that are
support.
just given to them, you know what I mean?
But they're meeting people where they
Not
are.
given to them,
And
but
yeah,
they line up
exactly,
with the
yeah.
values and.
I mean, and there is tons of evidence that demonstrates that food insecurity levels have,
Yeah.
increased
Of course, of course.
over COVID. So I mean, there's no debate or argument over that.
Right.
The data is there, and it's repeated, and it's solid evidence. So maybe doing something that addresses food insecurity, having a project focused on that.
Would it be our role to talk about, because like buying local isn't always convenient, so maybe facilitating the convenience of buying local, because it's a lot more easier to go to Sobeys
Absolutely.
and buy everything in one stop as opposed to, but like a lot of people don't know where to access this food, and there's,
That's the
you
main
know,
thing. Awareness is lots of people doesn't know where to get the locals, and most of them are small stores. They have the local products, right?
Yeah.
So nobody wants to go there because they know already it's expensive there. So it's hard to go. They will go to Walmart or Superstore and get the cheaper ones.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And if you have local, I will say that local products, at least the label there, so people can at least go and take the items local. So they have the label and take the label ones at least, so it will be easier.
but companies have invested a lot of money into trying to get their product out there with COVID. And I see a lot of repetition happening on the island
Yes.
with all sorts of different CSAs and deliveries and everything. That's, if there's a way, I don't know if that would be the role of our council, is to facilitate that convenience and try to work on.
I think so. I think that route facilitation is really important. I think
Yeah.
that we have a role to facilitate
Yeah.
easier access, easier affordability, easier those kind of things. So, from what I'm hearing, it's that how can we facilitate a way to maybe subsidize and find maybe it's physical space, but maybe it's online space, find a way to facilitate local
Mhm.
purchasing,
Yeah.
but
I would
addressing food security.
At the beginning of the pandemic, there was like a newsletter that was being sent out by the city of Charlottetown. I don't remember what department it was, about local stuff that you can buy. Is this like, does anybody remember this?
Oh,
It was like local
I think
restaurants.
it's
Like
Discover
Charlottetown.
We shared it, is all we did.
Oh, okay,
But it was
okay.
Discover Charlottetown that created it.
And it
So-
was basically who was still.
It was all the restaurants that
Right.
used to
Yeah.
order takeout.
Right.
It
Yeah,
It was great.
Yeah, it was great. And so, is that kind of what people are referring to? In terms of information? Like, I don't know how we would get
I
around
think-
subsidizing without having a definition of local.
Yeah, I know.
Something, yeah, but like you're still, like when you're just creating that list, like you still have all these independent people building their own infrastructure on how to get product to their clients. When they're all doing the same thing, and if we could sort of amalgamate that and consolidate it, and then.
You need a food hub with an online platform.
Yeah.
But I guess that's what our asset map is though, right?
Yeah.
Like that,
I guess,
we're just
yeah,
talking
that's
in
true.
circles here almost, I guess, because like.
That's right.
now we-
But I
now
really
we've got
like the
what we're
idea
doing
though
as
that
an
Morgan
asset map.
and Colleen have kind of sort of presented to us, where we find programs that are effectively addressing what we have kind of decided, I'm hearing, that, addressing food security issues in the city. And finding those programs and just, finding ways to support them. So if it is Healthy Harvest, or if it's if it's a school food program, I don't know what are those programs that we can somehow dovetail into and either.
And if what we're looking for is some like easy wins, like just giving some cash away to people that are already doing the programming and saying that it's specifically for purchase of, like we might have to slap a bit of a label on what we expect them to purchase, but we could do that, and then that's like that would be pretty easy, just
Yeah,
before you
I
check.
really like that. Yeah.
We can have that done, and then we can present this.
Then we've got action.
Then we've got action, baby, and then.
We've got pictures in the paper. That's
So,
So,
don't need
yes.
big checks or anything.
Keeping it
definitely makes sense.
But,
Keeping in mind that you don't have that much money.
No.
But we're just
Yes.
recognizing that, $500,
Can make a really
strategically
for sure.
placed here and there can have a big
Yes.
impact.
So then,
And-
Break down.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about a linkage with the food bank and the people that participate in the food bank as a place to promote farmers market as an access point for local? Or,
I would just, I guess my weighing in point here would be that as the city, one thing that we are often mindful of is just making sure that things are done, I guess, without having a better word, fairly. So there, on one hand, you guys are a resource to the community that is kind of like this voice of authority in terms of, and I would trust you to decide where the money is best spent, but I do also, on the other hand, just think we need a bit of a process, and I don't want it to be too crazy, like I'm not saying we need an open call.
No, I hear what you-
That's
Yeah.
kind of what I was.
Yeah,
Sarah,
yeah.
like, do we identify ongoing programs, or do we have like an application, like a very simple application
Yeah.
process?
we have a simple application already.
We
that
do.
We do have
We
simple
Should we like send out a call for applications? Like if your program is, like we want to
City
help.
had a gift voucher, right? $100 gift card for the COVID time. Do you remember that? So low income was getting the $100 voucher.
Right at the beginning.
Oh,
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, the
From
problem.
Phillips,
Yeah.
From the province.
Right.
Oh, that was
Our
province.
Board of Four Care has
Yeah.
to, we got 30 gift cards from city
Yeah.
to give, but it was for everywhere they can shop around for $100. But then we can, that money we can, like that if you are giving a gift card for the local products, so mention it in local. So whoever, what we, or the council will decide where to go and buy. That will be good. So the low income people will be getting that and they will go and buy there.
Is is the Sunday market still on?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's another farm days in the city, no, I guess that's not gonna
That's not gonna happen, no, that's canceled.
Give your head a shake.
All the great stuff is canceled.
Could I don't know how, can we set a timeline maybe, and then, like, I'm happy to do a jurisdictional scan of what programs actually are, like, I'm even thinking of places like Chances, they have some.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah,
can we,
Absolutely.
or as a council, do we have a distribution list of our community partners at all? If not, I think we should do a jurisdictional scan and maybe reach out to some of these key programs. Is there any, we can reach out to Morgan and I, who will connected with school food programs.
Well, I mean, there's breakfast programs, right?
Is there a need
There's
for
like
some,
some
like
chances,
some,
I don't know, but it might
add a
be
dollar,
relevant.
and if there's not a need there, then we can do
But
a
those, it's a
follow-up
good
or
point
maybe
that if they're not,
reevaluate, because
whatever's
sometimes
identified maybe should be.
we assume there's a need, but maybe there's, maybe.
Maybe there's, especially like, with the healthy harvest,
You've received a
right?
lot of more funding than you anticipated, you were saying, I mean, it's not that other dollars wouldn't be worthwhile, but
But there are certainly people out there that need it, but I agree that contacting them to find out.
like, what is the need? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great idea, that might help us, because like, I feel like school food is an excellent example right now. I feel like they're getting a ton of fun, well, they should be getting a ton of fun, because all of a sudden it's an online program
Yeah.
run by one person. So they should be well situated and being funded through the province, but maybe we just make some phone calls.
Yeah.
Should we just do a brief like brainstorming on a list of programs that we should that we should divvy up to contact maybe, or do you like refer?
Yeah, if we want to do
I've
that
been
here.
kind of making a list as I listen to everybody talk, and I'd like to just maybe put a little bit of a damper on the idea of just finding other organizations that are doing something and giving the money away. I think if I was on city council, I'd say, well, why don't we just do that? What do we need food council to do that for us? You know, it's like, I think we're expected to be doing something ourselves rather than just, and it's a very limited amount of money. So I was thinking a couple of things on my list here is the idea of encouraging this. The city has a tremendous amount of infrastructure in terms of equipment and labor and existing parks in the city. So encouraging the city to do more edible landscaping in those spaces and possibly using our money to purchase fruit trees or berry bushes, perennial edibles, etc. Thinking like the community where I live in Charlottetown, a group of people planted some edibles in Olivar Park, but it's a mess because they didn't have anybody to take care of it. So maybe we could use some of our money to leverage money from Skills PEI to hire people to take care of those kind of spaces if the city's not going to do it themselves. I think with COVID, and what I'm reading is that it's not so much the lack of production that we need to be worried about in terms of the next wave, but the breakdown in the food supply lines. So maybe putting out some information, like I'm always impressed with the number of immigrants that are in the Legacy Garden that are wildcrafting. I mean, they're just going around collecting stuff that we think is weeds, and that's like almost their staple food. The other day I learned that if you put a damp towel in the crisper drawer of your refrigerator, your produce will last like 3 times as long as it normally does. You know, and getting information like that out could be really pertinent to, you know, the local food movement, I think. I really like the idea of promoting the idea of front yard gardens, and again, if we could be maybe putting out some information about that. I've had an awful lot of people approach me this summer about caring for fruit trees and to prune them and what to take care of them and what to do. So I would like to see us doing something ourselves rather than just giving money away, especially when it's such a small amount of money to distribute. And how do we prioritize that? How do we make sure it's being well spent? You know, it's like a whole other infrastructure to be a foundation that's giving money away.
Well, yeah, if we're looking at something like that, then cooking for yourself will help that sustainability aspect, and because people don't know how to cook anymore. So,
Exactly.
Teaching people how to do that, how to utilize food better, and like a perfect tip of putting a damp towel into your crisper, all these little things that will help to, create longevity within the food system, because one of the problems is going to be distribution. And, if we can limit the amount of food being trucked onto the island, then it helps with our ability to withstand the COVID pandemic.
I think the reason why the funding for existing programs was a good idea for me is just because of the timing of the pandemic. It's going to be extremely difficult to plan any new programming right now. And in terms of the timing, it would be an easy win. I think the idea about going after the edible landscaping and partnering with other people and leveraging the money that we have is a fantastic idea. In terms of again, just about timing, it's almost October. It's not really, to me, the right time to be thinking about edible gardens or edible, the growing season here is over unless you have lights and equipment and things like that. So I think from my perspective, it doesn't seem like a huge partnership, but it puts our name out there, and we do have a little bit of cash, and it can be, used in really strategic ways if you give it to the right programs. So that's what I think of that.
I think once we have a strategic plan, we can embed some of those things. Like I just wrote down, like maybe we do need to have like a theme of the month that ties back to sustainability and all these links that we always talk about. And then maybe like May is actually edible gardens, and you know, and then it's more timely, and then people are thinking about it. And then we have recommendations going to the committee that go to council, and position statements and programming all going on at the same time. I don't want to lose sight of those projects, but we're not using those right now. There's apple picking, but.
And I think the city would be very on board with that kind of initiative. Like,
I'm sorry, what?
I think the city would be very on board with that kind of initiative. Like, something that's on our radars with my department is increasing those edible orchards and things like that. But I think spring would be probably the time to talk about it.
You mentioned earlier that food waste is high on the list of priorities.
Well, we have a waste reduction week coming up, and there'll be a food waste day.
I'm sorry?
We have a waste reduction week coming up at the end of October, and one of the days is on food waste.
So, given the fact that everybody has composting containers and it gets picked up regularly, what's the issue that still makes it a high priority? Like, what's not being addressed?
Well, we're not making it a high priority issue. We're making waste reduction an issue, and there's a national initiative on waste reduction. One of the days that's been assigned with that waste reduction week is food waste. So we're going to put out some information about food waste.
And maybe that's something to think about as a council, like where does the waste from our restaurants go? Like, you know, there are municipal policies that are related to those things. There are, you know, like some public health things around that, and that kind of impede some of that donation as food waste, those kind of things. But maybe that's something to explore to tie into that, so then it's something that we're doing. Because I'm with you, Phil, I really want to be doing things. I don't want to be talking about things. And I don't know, just to throw that out there is maybe there's an action associated with that.
Yeah. I mean, if there's interest in that, I can certainly speak to it. But so at the moment, yeah, it's just one day of the week. It's the Friday of the third week in October, so October 19th to 25th. So it would be the 23rd. At the moment, so the guests we were supposed to have tonight were Kathleen Brennan from the province and an intern that she has, who's a nutrition student at UPEI. So her and I are working together, and the nutrition student is planning like a challenge for that day. I think kind of like focusing on, I'm not sure, she's still working on it, but around food waste. She's just got an 8-week internship, so it seemed like a good project, and I think she might do a little bit of work on some social media content for it. But the question was just if you guys wanted to be involved in some way, really. I mean,
I have an idea though, just to kind of circle back a tiny bit, that maybe addresses a little bit of everything here, in terms of being, you know, offering training and guidance. And I mean, we also have to remember we're not a management team here at all, and so we aren't going to be able to sort of hire and manage people. We are not, like, that's not within our mandate. We only each individually have, you know, to commit 2 to 4 hours. You know, so do we want to commit our time to doing, you know, I don't know what, like pruning trees? I don't know. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But if we had a series of webinars, if we hired someone to develop some, you know, online material for us, some teaching sessions, like on, you know, how to prepare foods, you know, make the best use of that 10 pounds of carrots that you harvested from your garden this year because everybody planted a garden, or how to, you know, dehydrate. I don't know, like, you can do a continuous series. And that might be a role for us, is to sort of inform that, find someone to develop those materials for us in a very professional manner. And then, you know, there we are all of a sudden out there, we've made ourselves known and present, and we can talk about food waste, we can talk about food skills, we can talk about gardening, we can talk about, you know, all kinds of different things, and we can do that in a format that doesn't, you know, irrelevant of there being, you know, another, you know, second wave or not. You know, we can still have ourselves present and involved and engaged, and it might be even have an ability to, using those webinars, or even just those, maybe it's just a YouTube channel, I don't know, like we can flesh this out, but, maybe having ways that we can, sort of digitally gather people too, like through that, in a webinar format or something.
Well, I mean, yeah, we have dozens of chefs here. We've got Film VI. You could easily make little videos on how to be more sustainable. And then, but it's also like, are we just looking to focus on sending a message out to the consumer, or do we also want to send a message out to the industry as well?
Well, no, I think we want to do both.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think education at both those levels is really important and is in our mandate. And that would be a really excellent way to, like you said, like you would accomplish a bunch of different things. And I think we would just tailor a message kind of based on the timing of, like we could work on like a monthly release, and then we would have this platform that people are familiar with, so that if you wanted to do like more not intense, but longer educational things, or use them as a way to get feedback, or that's an awesome idea. I like that a lot.
Because I see like more like the webinars and more of the more intense activities would be better suited towards like industry people as opposed to the consumer, and then just having information like the more you know type things out to the consumer would be a lot easier. And just approach chefs. We have Culinary Institute here, approach them to come up with tips on how to utilize food more effectively and efficiently. And then the webinars can be done for how to build infrastructure and maintain this sustainable food infrastructure. And because they're going to be more invested in participating in that webinar than, like just some random person.
And attention span too.
They're already invested, so let's.
But it might be
use
like
it
a
better.
newcomer doing like a 30-second thing about how to.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking with what Karen said. I think, if we contracted somebody, I mean, they could do 8 videos that are 3 to 5 minutes long just by interviewing each one of us.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
45
Yeah.
seconds filled.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
that's where our value comes, is we have those connections, or we have that expertise ourselves.
Yeah.
So, or we can say, you should talk to this person. I think that's where our value is, and sort of, and we can guide that. And I think that everyone can kind of take on, we all have our own sort of specialized areas of interest. So, I might say, I'd like to really talk about, or have someone talk about this. And
I can show people how to bone and chicken.
yeah, exactly,
Could so that it doesn't get like so carried away into like this.
Yes,
this
thank
list we do. Could we maybe identify like a calendar from this September to next September, themes of every month?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking once we have an actual strategic plan, then we'll have ways to leverage. We can do the video, maybe that's an action we can talk about as approving tonight, I don't know, but maybe coming up with a calendar. So October, we'll say hypothetically would be food waste, just because there's the national interest there.
What day is that though, just for time?
It would be tight, but I think it's doable. It would be, I think, the 23rd of
Okay.
October.
So
Would
let's
be-
say
and it would
that,
need to be ready ahead of that to get communications approval, but
yeah,
but I actually
So-
think that would be a lovely addition. And the nice thing with that is you would need approval from committee on the project as a whole, but I got permission, like I got their approval on food waste, like for the waste reduction week last night. So we could do it under that umbrella.
We could even slip it under there. if we
Yeah, and then have this like
Yeah.
approved separately. And we probably wouldn't pay for it even out of potentially your budget, I don't know. We can do that.
And then we could start to really develop something when we get together next, and, start to build that calendar, start to talk about, who our connections are, even what our own special areas of expertise are. Like maybe Brad does a video on how to debone a chicken,
Yeah.
and I guess just to continue that thought, thinking out loud too, that, okay, so there's a video that goes out, but maybe it is the business that we do some research and create a position statement on what that means for our city. That gets released, and at the same time, we send a recommendation for a policy to council, because that's what we're set up to do. And that gives us at least some structure around 12 themes. And then we can, with the strategic plan, then we can start to identify some of these areas
Yeah.
that maybe don't fit into a theme per se, but are important skills for consumers and producers to have, and policies to go forward. So I just feel like that there's some different folds that we can approach from that there's a video, that's an action that we can do here. There's like the video, but then maybe we start to either do position statements or just like a little comms thing on what this theme means, what food waste means, why it's important, but also matching it with maybe, if it's not a program, at least a policy recommendation.
Yeah.
Such as more edible gardens in May or
Yeah.
like, you know.
Yeah.
And you may not want to do one of those every month.
No, that's
No,
not work.
but,
What I'm thinking is,
Yeah.
on,
I
for
think
example, of
fully,
like
yes.
the edible landscaping, like you could have like a short segment on people talking about,
Yeah.
you know, send them to the asset map that has that as a subsection.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or if you're talking about, you know, like other programming or whatever, you could always say like, here's your
Yeah.
follow-up, is that here's our asset map, just to remind people that kind of
Yeah.
always go to it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a policy statement every month, like you say, like
That's a lot of work.
A
It is,
policy
but-
statement,
but-
but I love the idea
but-
of like a monthly, every month we just send out something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got this vague kind of,
Yeah.
around the time.
And then where we can, engage in a broader or bigger way, that we do that, where we can sort of issue a position statement or policy statement. And that we do that, and maybe we could bring in some, we flashy experts too, right? Like maybe you can bring in Sandor Katz to talk about fermentation, because we can now, right? We couldn't physically bring him here, but we can bring him in, for a 5 or 10 minute video or something, as an example. So we might be able to leverage, our ability to connect with some bigger, more recognizable sort of individuals as well, if we want.
I seem to recall last year, in the spring, early spring, winter, that we were trying to figure out how do we release information, like through city's Facebook or, and I don't recall, and I missed some meetings.
There
but if
being a
that was
resolution to
resolved.
that, yeah.
So
That's
on
really-
That was a challenge.
On things like this, the way that I'm not sure like broader exactly what you want to know about, but on things like this, if it was going onto the city's website and through social media, it would be like through me, and I would pass it on to our communications department. They would give their stamp of approval. That's how it works with everything I put out. And then they do the post. Like I can put it on the website, but they are the ones in control of the social media channels, so they would post on there.
But would we like develop, like say we wanted like a 30-second video on food waste or
Yeah.
preventing food waste, and we put our logo on it.
Yeah.
We do the whole production, but then we just send it to you to send to comms.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they could potentially come back with tweaks.
Yeah.
Generally, they don't. Like I work with them. They're the department I work most closely with now.
So maybe, if we're going to hire a professional videographer or cinematographer or whatever, then maybe we would have something sort of scripted that we would send to them and they could approve it so that, we can ensure that the content was.
We could do that, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Or even they're pretty flexible as long if you use common sense, they're generally okay
Sure,
with it.
okay.
It's usually really minor things. Like for an example, I did a video with Wild Child for Earth Day, and it was all about she made like mason bee houses, and they were super cute. But she had this line in there, and she I think she knew it too, where she talked about how when a bee stings you, their stinger gets ripped out and rips out their abdomen, and this thing's for kids, which fully I would have that conversation with the child. I would, but just they felt as though maybe that officially coming out from the city potentially could scare a child. Just wasn't the best thing to have in there, understandably. So it would just be little tweaks like that, but mostly it would just be tiny little things like that. Using common sense would be more than enough
Absolutely.
to protect us. And so maybe getting them to pass by these are the topics we're going to do, and this is generally what's going to be said. Maybe, but even that I generally keep them in the loop, but they don't. It's not really
Okay.
their job to tell us what kind of content to put out. It's just more to make sure nothing damaging to the city is going out.
I won't mention that the chicken was killed.
Well, we would have a very different target audience with a video about deboning a chicken than we what about making Mason bee houses? But yeah.
Not to limit the discussion, we're looking
But
at
yes,
7:30.
yes.
It does sound that we are on the same page in regards to having webinars.
Or videos.
Videos.
Actually,
Like we know, like I remember doing some research around this with the health promotion.
Yeah.
Like people do not watch anything about 30 seconds.
No.
So type
Yeah.
short,
Video.
very, very short educational things.
Yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
them really
Yeah.
really benign.
Yeah.
And then communications can't slap our hands on anything. And then have the beefier stuff in the policy.
Maybe, and with some links to some further information,
Yeah, you
things
can
like
provide
that,
links,
you
you can
know.
put a bit of a social media write-up, we can put more of a write-up on the website if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah, so
next
it'd be
exam.
like a little package come out every month.
Yeah.
With
It's
a
like
30-minute
little
video.
friendly, Fun.
It's fun, Bernie.
Oh,
And
good.
have we
What
decided
time is
that
It is fun.
our
No.
agreement that the October would probably be 2 weeks just because of the
I think that
timeliness?
would be perfect, and then I can put something, I'd like,
Yeah.
if that's the idea that we do these things in tandem, is that the idea?
Yeah.
And it's October for Food Week.
Food
Yes.
waste, and then maybe we can come back at our next meeting with, like, each of us with ideas around what
Yeah.
we think would be.
Yeah.
I even don't, I wrote down, like, I don't mind drafting a calendar and maybe I can circulate that and as a committee, we can kind of
Sure.
plug in what we think would be good ideas. Like Phil obviously had a ton of ideas here tonight and
Yes,
maybe
yeah.
some months are more suited to that as we discussed. And so we could plug those in and by the next meeting, we'll have kind of a structure for the year for what these little
Yep.
Yeah,
educational.
because I would just say that if you want, like, because having to pass it through, like, our standing committee does slow things down, like, just deciding what committee you would like that to go to, basically, and, I can look, if I look at my calendar, I can tell you when they'll be. I have a feeling it'll be, there's one on November 24th, and there's probably one on October 27th. So if we were to schedule our next meeting prior to October 27th, because we do also have to decide when we want to meet next and when we want to meet going forward, that we could then get like potentially a committee report into that to approve the project. But we also don't necessarily need all the specifics, so if you'd like me to just take it, if you'd like to select a budget and me to just take it without all the specifics, that's definitely a possibility. It's not their job to approve the content, it's their job to approve the bones of it and the expenditure.
Can we just do that?
Yeah,
Do we
certainly.
have to?
Who will look for a videographer? Do we have someone who?
Just go to film PI.
So would you like to coordinate that?
Yeah, sure.
So
Meeting one.
the only thing is to certainly go to them, like see, I don't know much about videographers on the island and I'm new to the island, but with the city often we do have to go out for like multiple quotes on things, but so keep that in mind.
Yeah,
But,
sure.
but yeah.
You're gonna look into what now?
In like for the little videos that we would produce, go to film PI to.
Yeah, I was in communication with Shannon's husband, I forget his name.
Luke?
Luke.
Yeah.
He gave me a price that was really quite reasonable. I think it was like $1,200, and he showed me some samples of what he had done that were very professional.
His work is good.
Yeah.
Okars
And I was just
on
gonna
there.
say, Okar was actually going to be involved with our, I forget what he was going to do, that was so long ago, but he was gonna do something for the actual workshop series.
Yeah.
And obviously that didn't happen. Anyway, there's lots of names out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if anybody has thoughts, maybe they can funnel
Yeah.
them your way, but you can choose and go out for 3 quotes and come back with the lowest.
The
Yeah,
recommendation.
for sure. Yeah, okay.
Okay, and then everybody, Meg, you can send that around, and
Yeah,
everybody
I'll
fill
create a
in their ideas for each month if they have one, or if maybe if somebody's already put it in there, you can like second
Checkmark
it
it.
somehow.
And do we
or
have someone
something.
who'd like to have talk about food waste for us?
Sorry?
Do we have someone to talk about food waste?
Well, that's something else that we need. Does somebody want to take on food waste?
Do you know what would have been cool? Like, I don't know how you would reach these. There was a student group at Colonel Gray that was doing a project on food waste. So you're not like that,
yeah.
are you?
That I could find that out.
That would be amazing, because that, like, to feature a student right out of the gate, that would be really cool.
Oh, that would be
We have
very
a
cool.
video or something or other resource from that group on our blog of information there. I found it.
I It
It
might
might
be
be
like a
on the
really
website.
easy avenue would be like, isn't there an organization called Food Waste Canada or something like that? Like, it would be really easy to just get a couple of facts and then like,
Yeah, and
and
it
valid,
could
and
even just
valid, you know,
be-
like the prop, like correct information.
And we've got tons of information actually from our district soup event last year in terms of food waste. So there's all kinds of resources there in terms of information, like in
Yeah.
terms, you know, like tidbits and.
Was there anybody there that was kind of an expert-ish, if we can work on the students? I think it would be really cool to feature a youth that had done
I
the
think that'd be
project.
great.
Yeah, I think that would be
It
really
was,
cool.
I was a part of something last year where they did, it was like a big food waste thing. They had all the students develop programs and stuff like that. What's her name? Well, yeah, Lucy Moore was there. She was talking about food waste in restaurants. It was with the high school, I think. I don't know if the high
Yeah.
school's here at all.
Yeah, it's ringing a bell for me.
Me
but I
too.
don't- Yeah, I'm not, I
What's
don't.
her, the Green Party federal rep there?
Darcy.
Darcy, yeah, she was involved in it. She's
That doesn't really put it down in terms of events.
That's true.
Like 3 days ago, so I don't know.
Yeah, she
Oh,
gets
geez, I wonder what that was. But Lucy's a chef, right?
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
spoken about food waste
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
so that would be another cool person to
Yeah,
feature.
yeah.
Morgan,
Yeah.
how do you feel about taking on food waste video?
Well, I feel like for this month, I will be working on, I haven't really heard that anybody else is offering to work on the strategic plan
Oh,
thing,
right.
so I will be focusing on that unless someone else wants to take that on.
Okay, so I guess I mean, if you.
We didn't really develop like an action plan.
Do you need to take on like the tendering of it or just writing out kind of a rationale?
Well, I was hoping that I would have help.
Yes, because I think with the rationale, like it doesn't need to be, it needs to be like a couple bullet points for me to throw in a committee report is all. And I mean, if you'd rather say do this, then I can also probably handle that, but I think certainly somebody needs to take on the tendering, whether it's 1 or 2 people, and if that's, if you wanted one of those people, and if somebody wanted to be.
I mean, I can call for a couple of quotes for a strategic plan.
Okay,
I'm
awesome.
not.
So you can get the quotes for
Yeah.
that. I guess if you've done it fairly recent, you even have.
Yeah,
one
I
in
know,
mind.
yeah, I can just do that,
Okay.
that's not a.
Is there anything we need to motion to,
Well, we'll need
I
to.
think it's just actions, isn't it?
Mhm.
or is it just action?
I guess it'll be, yes, because you'll come back with quotes for strategic planning. And then I guess the committee, the council will decide if that's what they want to proceed with. Or would, yeah.
So we'll be doing the rationale for the strategic planning.
Yeah,
We'll be coming back with a couple, we'll have a couple of quotes, we'll be asking for budget approval.
Correct,
Morgan's doing the rationale and you're getting the quotes.
I'll get the
right?
quotes.
yeah.
So that's strategic plan.
That's strategic
Yeah.
plan.
Then there's
there's
the
the-
webinar, community asset map stuff with, which Jackie and I will do.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then there's this third component
The
of like an
videographer.
action now, and it's the videographer, which
Yeah.
so
So you're gonna
videographer
get some
is Brad.
quotes?
Yeah, I'll get some quotes.
So I think with the quotes, what maybe would be best would be to get like a series quote, but
Yes.
a per video quote too, because we'll probably do the first one separately.
Well, it would be best to do, like, if you're gonna film it, it would be best to do all of them and then release them as
just-
you
I
need.
think based on
So with the
timeline
food-
though, to get it
which
pushed
one is
through
so
for the.
quick?
Yeah,
Then-
food.
I think we need like one
Okay.
and then a together.
And
then
then we're
another
saying that
12.
like the food
'Cause I
waste,
agree.
the food waste budget of the video, that might come from.
It can
different-
probably come from my
Oh,
own
okay,
budget,
okay,
just because
okay.
it's already
Because
been
we will
approved
Sure,
and
sure.
we approved, stuff like that.
For the bigger ones, yeah, or for the.
So you're wanting to film this within the next
Couple weeks.
couple weeks, so.
Yeah, for the food waste one. And then the other, like, then the series would be,
So-
we could do.
And if we want to.
Just one, like the 30-second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like from the food waste perspective, we're looking at targeting information towards the consumer as opposed to the
Correct.
industry.
For this specific one,
For
and
this
we
specific-
won't have, we don't need necessarily like a quote, or sorry, we don't need to like tell them what all the different ones are gonna be about.
Okay.
Right now, we'll decide that, Meg will send out a calendar, we'll fill that in, next
Sure.
meeting we'll decide. For right now, we know one on waste, food waste. that
But
we'll
I think to
dive
your
next.
question, consumer and industry, I think food waste, both,
Well,
like those kind of things.
Well-
The burden's always thrown on the consumer, and
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Exactly, I think that's what I'm
It's
saying.
industry is the problem.
Yeah,
And but the burdens, like with recycling, right, we're all horrible because we don't recycle, but it's, you're making the plastic that we have to buy.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we could do one on consumer just being a bit more,
Because that's different, like that's packaging as compared to the food
Yeah.
itself. Because I think about foods, I'm a food scientist, so I think about food spoilage and food preservation.
And that's what I think, but.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where
just
I
really
went too.
interesting.
Yeah,
We
so
just
that's
went
interesting,
there.
yeah.
I think in terms of just like really brief educational videos, like it is our role, I totally agree with you, and I think that education on an individual level can only do so much. But we, I think as a group, try to do things at different levels at once, so we can kind of say these little clips are for the general citizen. But that there's, you know, this website that you can go to that, you know, like I think there's like Food Waste Canada, and I'm pretty sure that they have resources on there
Mhm.
for restaurants and
Yeah,
other
for sure.
levels of, and you know, like if we got to the point later on that we would, that we would also say like, here are the recommendations to municipal governments to serve as the example, and then municipal policy usually feeds up to
yeah.
provincial and so on. So
So I think a consumer based for this food waste one.
Yeah.
For the food-based one
I
will
think
be,
for-
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so then
And-
It's like an easy,
Yeah.
low hanging
yeah,
thing to pull off.
And maybe the rest of the hows will come about as you're talking with the videographer, as we talk to maybe the school to see who could participate in the video.
Who's gonna follow up with that? Do you have?
Yeah, I kind of lost track of that conversation in the end.
So I'm going to suggest someone like, you know, we talked to Rebecca Sly last year for Disco Soup.
Fantastic.
And she was going, because, I mean, she's very, like, she is, you know, has a following in social media, she's very recognizable. And now she's leading this, you know, we're very involved in the school food program.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, I mean, she was going to talk about how to use pumpkins.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
after Halloween, right? Because there's
Yeah.
all these pumpkins all over the place. Like, how can you know, what can you do with a pumpkin kind of after Halloween? As sort of that, you
That's
know.
so timely.
It's
Yeah, exactly. So, you
Yeah.
know, so maybe, you know, she might be someone really good at for 30-second clips.
She would be perfect, and she's, I'm happy for her.
I was just like, it's all over temporary.
I know, I'm going to say,
It doesn't matter, but I have her contact information.
I know that you know her very well, so if you would do
Okay,
that.
so Margaret to do that?
Are you cool with that?
Yeah,
We'll
sure.
pick Rebecca, you know Rebecca?
No.
Okay, she's lovely.
You love her.
Rebecca's fly, I'm happy to message.
For her to be in the video.
Yes, she'll
Yeah,
be in the
Yeah.
Like
video.
hers, like, we're gonna feature
So
her.
would she come up with the concept?
I
Well, I
feel
think
like
that's
if you tell her about
pumpkins.
food waste, what's that?
I love the idea of pumpkins personally.
That's like
Honestly,
a simple, easy thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Why don't we just?
Yeah, run it by her, and she might have some other idea
She
too.
might.
She's very creative.
She's creative, and she'll just pull something up and be like, boom, done. And then I think we'll put a link. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
So we have a
Not really
video.
involved. Just do that one thing. Okay, guys? Everybody else has to pitch in over here, okay?
And then Brad will get us the
right,
photographer. So Morgan will contact her, but then you can refer her on to who? To coordinate timing with,
The videographer.
yeah, who's gonna do that?
Wait, how's the timing? We're just gonna put them together and they're gonna make a video.
Well, I think
As
the
soon as-
whoever volunteers to do this will coordinate that and be there and da.
Okay, so who is that person?
Sheena? Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
You wanna do that?
Wonderful, thank you, Sheena.
Okay,
Fantastic.
perfect.
And obviously, yeah, any,
So
Any, like,
we'll get the
big
quote from the
things that
videographer,
give
we'll
away,
get the content,
Yeah,
Content from.
and then we
Rebecca.
have the coordinator. Perfect.
sounds good.
Perfect.
so once you kind of have the videographer nailed down, and we'll stay in communication with that just because it will be getting like funneled through my budget for this one video.
Okay.
For the first one, and then we'll be, if we have to kind of communicate, and you can keep us in the loop.
And we have everyone's email with the last.
Yes, everybody's in that last email.
And will Brad be also seeking a quote for the 12-month, like the full year-long series, like the full 12 videos as well?
I think so, I think
Okay.
more like
All right.
11, and then kind of get
Okay,
one
perfect. I just
for-
wanted.
Yeah.
And I think it would be kind of nice too, because actually maybe make it contingent, like we'll have the first video, and if we're happy with it, to go for the
Yeah.
rest
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
It'd be like a nice test in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, okay.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Good.
Now that we have our action plan.
Are you happy?
Thanks for all the info. No, I'm always happy.
I
Me too.
Is the council happy? That's more important.
I think so.
we have actions, people know what to bring back. There's always, if you forget or unsure, you can contact Katrina or myself.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
both took notes to make sure that we follow the action plan.
I will send this out in the next couple of days with all the action items.
Okay.
And before we do a motion to adjourn, could we have a date? Can we discuss what our time
Yes,
schedules are, availability moving forward?
yeah.
It'd be nice to have something that we know every month.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like it.
yeah, I think-
Meeting's great.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I'm in full disclosure, it's extremely complicated right now within the city. Things like what happened tonight happen all the time, and as do getting bumped because of other meetings, just because they all have to happen in here. But we will pick a time and we will hold it works. That's kind of the best we can do. Our most likely option for not getting bumped is, I believe, like the Wednesday, the week of council, because they're the least likely to bump
Yeah,
us.
you had said that there was.
But that's fairly soon is the only thing. Let me see what I'm gonna need. I just need to check on my actual.
So the 28th is 4 weeks from tonight. Is that week of the council?
No. I believe that I just need to bring back to my calendar.
Although maybe that's not the worst. You can see what it is, but as you're looking at it, you can keep looking all the time. Then we would meet sooner, get some of this stuff moving more. I mean, realistically, we're probably not going to want to meet December, for example. I don't know if we did. I think we did last
We
year.
had that special Christmas meeting.
Yes, it was just a special meeting.
Yeah.
But it just, I'm not opposed if we met in the next couple weeks, if that means that that's going to be our schedule moving forward.
Yeah.
That'd be fine,
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Since we were really supposed to meet last week.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
right.
yes.
The right one.
We would've
Yeah,
had-
it's the 21st.
So, council will be, well, it would have been the 12th, but that's Thanksgiving, so it'll be the 13th. At the moment, nothing is booked for the Wednesday, the 14th. So that would be like 2 weeks from today. Or, I mean, we can do whatever you like.
I have a date in here already for the 21st for Charlottetown Food Council.
I think that was from the old.
That's the old,
Yeah, old calendar, because I've had those dates
Yeah.
too.
I mean, should the other consideration be to book it early, anticipating a possible bump?
So the thing is that but
Like, how likely are we to get bumped?
oh, like not, the problem is I don't know, it's just,
Yeah, I
so
know.
council can decide with like 2 days notice to have a special meeting of council, and so you just don't know when that's gonna be. So the reason that it's unlikely is because like it's unlikely for them to need a special meeting 2 days after they just met,
Yes.
is the point.
Yeah.
The other option would be, so like the next council meeting after that would be,
The 14th doesn't work for me, but
but it's very soon, so. But, and I mean, we can also just disregard it and hope for the best, because you never know what's gonna happen, so we can pick whatever week works.
That would become the second Wednesday of every month.
It would be the second Wednesday of every month, yeah.
well, if we started the pattern then, that would be fine, right?
I'm good with second Wednesday.
Wednesdays are fine for me,
Is everybody?
Good, good.
I'm good.
So October 14th?
Yeah,
Second
And then we
Wednesday.
can-
and we
Is
can
that
probably
fine?
anticipate for it to be a fairly short meeting,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
can check in
Are
on
we
everything.
saying same
Yeah,
time?
I'm also
5
just
to
checking
7?
on,
Ish.
on act.
Yeah.
I liked 5:30 better than.
Oh,
5.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
5:30 to
Yeah,
7:30, but.
Yeah, 5 is a bit of a push.
Sure.
Uh,
I
I
will,
work out in Mount
let me
Stewart.
quadruple check everything. Let me check one other thing, just before we check all of the avenues that I can. Okay.
It doesn't
So
sound
no, I do think there's something on that Wednesday. I think that there's, yeah, I think somebody stole that spot. If they don't have this room booked, they have Parkdale booked, but they'll have to be in here. I know they will. So we could, and Tuesday, that's gonna get moved there. So we could pick Thursdays, or we could bump back a week and do the 21st, and do the third week.
Wednesdays are a lot better. for me.
Wednesdays are better?
I'm not available that Thursday, the 15th.
I'm not either, yeah.
So,
Is it 21st?
21st? Give me 1 second.
And then we can do the 3rd.
And 5:30 is perfect because the meeting that happened before us today is going to keep happening. So basically, they were before us last week too, and when I bumped our meeting, they also bumped their meeting to this week because of the hurricane.
So we're at the 21st then?
Yes, so the 21st from 5:30.
Oh, I've got you in here already.
Yeah, exactly. Just come back, but I will send the meeting.
Back to the original.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the 21st then?
Yes.
It is,
21st.
yeah.
And every month after that will be the 3rd unless there's a
That's really
major.
It's fine.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It'll be recurring.
Can I have a motion to adjourn if there's no other things, other business?
I can. Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second here?
I'll second that.
All right, well, thank you everybody so much. I know that was long, but I think we got somewhere. I need to turn off the live stream.
Oh, right.
I mean, it's,
I forgot that was.
I forgot.
Yeah.
Alright,